My name is Rachel Rofe. I created this show because I wanted to help you see that if you have a choice, you can choose a better life. If you're listening to this podcast, you're in a pretty fortunate position. You have free will, ability to connect to the internet, and access to all kinds of new education. This podcast is meant to help you make the most of your good fortune. We talk with all kinds of people here from all walks of life because I want you to see that no matter what your situation, there's always a way to create a life that you're proud of. Hello. So in today's episode, we're going to be speaking with Dale Partridge, who is just incredible. I was feeling so intimidated before we started this podcast because I just think the guy is incredible. I mean, as you're going to hear, he has founded a bunch of companies. One of the companies is called Sevenly, and what that company does, if you haven't heard of it, is basically every time any piece of merchandise is sold, they donate $7 to a charity, and their charities end up switching over every single week. And so since he's launched the company, they've donated over $4.2 million to various charities around the world. So just incredible. He has this book called People Over Profit, and it just really talks about how to create a company that is a good company, like really solid values that can actually do really well. And he talks about in our interview how a lot of companies go through this 4-part era where they start out really wanting to make the world better and have really great missions, and then they go into efficiency and then this area of deception. And so we talk about that, and then they get into the apologetic era, and that's the 4-part cycle. But we talk about how you can avoid that altogether. So we cover that. We cover just what Dale's life looks like now, what's important to him, how he was able to create so many multi-million-dollar companies because Sevenly was just one of them. And we talk about how he deals with fear and just all kinds of important things to him. And then at the very end, we touch just a little bit on his social media followings and how he is able to have such a huge following because he has over 700,000 Pinterest followers, 756,000 Pinterest followers, 142,000 on Twitter. And that's just for his main name. He also has, for his companies, more hundreds of thousands of followers. So I learned a lot from this, and I hope that you really enjoy it too. All right, here we go. Thank you so much for being here, Dale.
Hey, thanks for having me. Super stoked to share my story and hopefully let your listeners walk away with something they can use.
I'm sure that's going to happen. So the intention behind A Better Life is to show people that if they have a choice, they can choose a better life. So in that spirit, can you take a minute to just share with us some of the things that you're most proud of in your life?
Yeah, for a long time, I wanted to be a successful entrepreneur, and I thought that was kind of the purpose of life for me, and I made a lot of progress there, and built many multi-million-dollar companies, and I think as I've gotten older, I'm learning that the most important things in life are, being a great husband and being a great father and being a great friend and a great son and a great older brother, and I'm trying to really look at lives of people that I follow. I used to follow people that were really successful in business, and I was like, yeah, like that's great. What I've kind of tipped it on its head and said, hey, how can I start finding people that are not just really good at business and successful there, but also have like really incredibly like strong families and a great marriage and a great name in the community and are wise. And so I'm trying to look for more of these people now, and the goal, for me, is to watch my kids run around in the backyard. So that's the exciting part, is I'm shifting a little bit into some clarity there.
Oh, I love it. And I wasn't expecting that answer. So now I'm so curious. Who are some of the people that you're following?
Well, they're not people you're going to find on social media, but I have a couple of people I can tell you shortly about. One of them is, his name's Jim Van Eerden. He's the chairman of my past company that I founded, Sevenly, and he's got 10 children, and he, his last one that he had, he adopted with Down syndrome, and he's got his boys and respect him, and his daughters adore him, and his wife and his marriage are strong. He's ran multi-million-dollar companies and does charity work, and he's just a spiritual leader. He's a great all-around guy, and these people are very rare. And another guy in my realm who's here located in Bend, Oregon with me, his name's Matthew JACOBSON. who's got 8 kids, and very similar. Just this idea where it's like his focus is not just to be successful at work or successful at home. And I know people that are good at both. I know lots of people that are great dads and husbands, but they have very little purpose in work. It's a unique dynamic when you're like extra good at all 3 of them. And so they're just some Matt Jacobson. You can find him online. He's got a little bit of a following, but that's been the shift, and it's been such a cool journey to just kind of shift my gaze in a different direction.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm also curious because I remember reading that you're really competitive, or you were really competitive. How does that play into changing your focus to being more into family?
So as a business guy, I'm super competitive. I'm also competitive with myself mostly. So meaning that I'm constantly trying to get better, and I'm constantly trying to grow, and I'm addicted almost to growth. And I'm learning to find the balance in that, because I think that sometimes the way that how addicted I am might not be good. I'm looking more to patience, and for example, like I'm trying to teach where I'm really comfortable and not teach where I'm not really comfortable. And I think that many men especially, I know this is happening obviously for women too, but just from my experience with men is that they want to start teaching on things before they're seasoned in them. And so for me, it's the competitiveness in me that says, oh, I'm ready, I can do this. And so writing this book was a hard thing, because I had to really say, like, can I really write this book? And I felt confident with 11 years of entrepreneurial experience under my belt that I could. And I hope that my books coming in the future will have that kind of cred. But I also have said no to a lot of things that I go, man, I'm just not ready to talk about that yet. And that's hard, because I want to win. I want to win now. And so it's helped me a lot, and it's helped me realize again that the most important thing in the world is the relationships that we have.
I love that. And I really love that you mentioned about not wanting to teach things until you've learned them, because I think it's become really popular for people to say we teach what we need to learn. And something about that just doesn't sit right with me. I'd rather people either get a good grip on it first or master it before they go and teach that.
Absolutely.
So I have been just really excited. I was saying right before we got started how excited I am about your book and just talking with you. And I want to dive into that. So to give people some context just about the type of companies that you founded, because I know you founded 7 now, or is it more?
It's 7 still.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So can you share with Sevenly in particular, since you referenced that so many times in the book, just what the purpose was behind it and like the tangible results from it?
Sure. Yeah. I started as an entrepreneur going into fitness companies, and then I started a rock climbing gym, and I got fired from my own company, which is a story we can talk about later if we want. Learned a lot about leadership, learned about who I am, started a branding agency, a conference company. And then I all of a sudden got to the point where I go, you know what, making 6 figures and stuffing my pockets with money, success wasn't fixing me. And I realized that I wanted to figure out how I could blend purpose and profit. And what did that look like? I started asking the hard questions, and I started flipping capitalism upside down, and I wanted to create a philosophy out of the things that I was already doing in my mind. And the way that I was running my companies, I was always very different in the way that I thought about employees, the way that I thought about leadership. And I wanted to really implement those principles. So I started a company called Sevenly in 2011 with my business partner out of a desire to, I realized I wanted to help people. I wanted to do something with charities. And I realized that I wasn't the guy that I so badly wanted to be the guy that you would see a photo of me like digging a well in Africa, or like Blake Mycoskie from Tom's Shoes, like putting my kid's shoes on in Peru. But I wasn't that guy, and I had to be okay with that. I wasn't called to the field. I was called to the people, called to the field, and this was hard for me to swallow. But I said, okay, well, what does this look like in a business? People that follow me know that I'm a Christian guy. I try to be as real as it can get from that perspective, because I know a lot of Christians live a pretty ugly life on the outside. And I remember asking the question. I said, okay, if Jesus started a company, what would it look like? And I wanted to figure out, like, we church and stuff, and Christians, they always talk about things outside of business, and they almost separate it. I'm like, no, I I don't think Jesus changes wherever he's at. I mean, I think if you started a company, what would it really look like? So I started asking some hard questions, and I came up with the idea of Sevenly, where every week we'd partner with a new nonprofit. We would give $7 of every item sold to a charity. So if we sold 1,000 products in a week, we would give that charity $7,000. And it was cause first. It was like helping people. And I remember the lesson that I learned is that building $1 million company wasn't even on my radar. It was just a result of what I was doing. And I had to stop seeing money as the primary goal, but rather as a product of helping 1 million people. Mm. And so I shifted into that mindset, and I just got lost in helping people. And all of a sudden, I looked out, and 2.5 years later, we've given away $4.2 million, grew the company to almost 50 employees and almost $10 million in revenue. And I was on the cover of magazines, and I was traveling the world and speaking to 3,000 Facebook employees at their headquarters, and everything just worked. And I thought, wow, like what a cool thing to just focus on the right things, and things typically work. That was the experience there, and the philosophies that I had implemented at Sevenly over the 3.5 years that I was there. I'd recently sold my stock in the company, and the lessons I learned there and the philosophy of my business, I think, really got a chance for me to put into practice what I was thinking, and it worked. And then that's why I wrote the book, People Over Profit, that I think will help teach the lessons that worked for me, as well as that are working for like some of the biggest companies in the world, and help people create better companies.
Awesome. And can you explain real quick why you opted to create a new charity every week? Because I think this is a really powerful message for people.
Yeah. So one thing is, it was super stressful. So I remember my friend, kind of mentor at the time, was like, Dale, you created a hell of a model for peace in your life. Every week you got to create new products and a new campaign and a new marketing strategy and a new charity. And it was a lot of work to do that. But I think people are they're addicted to variety. And I think that, not everybody cares about the same issues. So like having that chance for every week a new option. And I think people also wanted to create a purchase with a purpose. And they wanted to have that guilt-free buying experience. And so we became the ability for people to give in the daily things that they spend. Like, you're going to buy a shirt anyways. Like, you might as well buy it from us and then feed a child for a month. So I think that connection there was really helpful in the growth of the company.
Yeah, and one of the things that I just loved about that concept is, so many people talk about having this elusive purpose or this one thing that they're so passionate about. And what I love is that it doesn't need to be one specific thing if you're not tied to like one particular thing that you want to support. It's all these different ones, so you're still doing good, but it doesn't have to be in a very tight kind of fashion.
Exactly, and there's so many causes out there, right? Like, we don't need to be just stuck with food, or we don't need to be stuck with just water. And I think that opening your eyes to what's really happening in the world, which is a really hard thing to do. A lot of people when they see it, they see it, and they mentally believe it. But if they emotionally believe it, they actually have to do something about it. And so I don't think a lot of people emotionally believe when they see people dying from starvation, or when they are sex trafficking. Like, they don't want to emotionally believe it, because that means they'd actually have to change, and they'd have to do something about it. And so our goal is try to help people emotionally get it and say, hey, it's time to make a move. And I think that's what really made us successful.
Yeah, I mean, with over $4.2 million at this point, I would say so.
Yeah, in $7 donations, right? That's the weird part, is that they're all in tiny donations.
It's crazy. So awesome. I'm just so inspired by this. As soon as I was telling you before, I started reading the book when I was getting a blowout. I got home and I immediately went over to my boyfriend, who's launching it's part clothing. There's all kinds of merchandise. And I just told him about you and how just pumped I was. Just such good stuff. So in People Over Profit, you share that most businesses in America go through this 4-part cycle. Well, actually, before I go into that, can you just give just a brief overview of each era?
Yeah, so I learned, the big thing was I was wondering, why was my company working? I thought, holy crap, like, how is it that I'm giving 23% of our top line revenue away and we're still growing and people love it? And I wondered, is this something that we do differently, and why aren't other companies doing it? And then I started realizing that there was other companies that had been giving but faded away from it. And I learned that other companies that had great startup stories but were horrible companies now. And I thought, wow, like companies change, especially over like long periods of time. And I realized after doing my research that all companies start in what I call the honest era. It's because they have to. I mean, they can't be dishonest. They go out of business. And they start with this beautiful mission, and they're focused. And then over time, they start to forget, kind of fueled by growth and a little bit of a lack of control of their growth. They move into what I call the efficient era. And this is an era of time where assembly lines and outsourcing and some of these eras are some of these attributes of kind of growth and mainstreaming and this is when a company used to do all their stuff in America and then they outsource it to China, right? Or when they used to have somebody answer the phone and now they have a call center and then they don't even really know that they're there. But then it's when a company goes from there to the next era, which is the third era, which is the deceptive era, where they've, this might be 20, 30 years after they started. It could even be as little as 10 years, but it's when a company forgets really who they are. And, I sometimes use Bank of America as this example. I mean, if you hear their startup story, which is too long of a story for us today, but they have an incredible startup story. And you're like, wow, I love that company. Who is that? And then you go, it's Bank of America. And you go, what? And you look at them now and they got a lot of bad brand perception. I mean, most anybody you say, hey, do you think that Bank of America values people over profit or profit over people? There's very few people that will say that oh yeah, they value people over profit. And so they find themselves in a deceptive era where a change in leadership and seasons and transition, and they're different than when they started. They're not the same company. And typically companies that fall into that era either have to go backwards into the efficient era, back to the honest era, but they often almost die or they struggle or they, competitors come up and they're starting to overtake their market share. And they push them into what I call the fourth era, which is the final era, which is the apologetic era. And this is an era of regaining consumer trust and kind of rebuilding that relationship between you and the people that you serve. And it requires like extreme vulnerability and transparency on authenticity and honesty and generosity and courage. And I talk about that. So the ultimate goal of the book is to say, hey, this era sucks, or this cycle sucks. Like why do we want it? We don't even want to do this cycle. I don't want to have a company that is honest and then all of a sudden is efficient, and then all of a sudden it's deceptive, and then all of a sudden has to go to an apologetic era to get back to the honest era. I don't want that. How do we just skip this altogether and just stay honest all the time? And who's done that? And what are they doing to do that? And that's what the book's about. I mean, it's talking about, well, I see companies that have been in business for 20 plus years with great brand perceptions, high employee retention rates, and they do things that are super unique. And it's the funny thing is that none of them know that they do them. They don't realize it's not on their mission statement. It's not in their core values. It's not on their tattooed on the wall in their corporate HQ. It's instead it's not the things you're going to find in Fortune or Forbes or Fast Company magazine. These are things that these leaders know that are the timeless principles that they learned like in kindergarten, like when their parents taught them to not lie and to share and to like care for one another and to be kind. And it sounds too simple to be true, but it's very difficult. If it was not that difficult, then everybody would be doing it. But the leaders of people over profit companies like Patagonia and Whole Foods and North Face and REI and Chick-fil-A and In-N-Out and some of these other great brands that have had this success, their leaders are just really incredible, core, foundational, timeless, principle type people. And that's what I'm saying, hey, this is my philosophy on business. This is these people's philosophy on business. Here's what it looks like, and here's how you can adopt it.
What are the things that you think are in their mindset to be able to keep these? I know you share that there's 7 core beliefs in the book. How do they keep those beliefs?
It's very difficult. I mean, I think that it requires a leader that's capable of what I actually say in the book is they're constitutionally incapable of operating without them. And it takes a focus. I mean, it takes a focus on valuing people, right? It takes a focus on telling the truth, completely and clearly, and it's hard to be authentic and transparent and to focus on those things, and quality, keeping quality high, and generosity and courage. I mean, these are the things that I talk about, and it's hard because they're big terms, and you got to have a leader that says, I'm willing to figure out what this big term looks like tactically in business and in my business and with customers.
Yeah, and I have so like, for example, and I don't know, I'm sure you still do what you were doing with the hiring and firing with Sevenly.
Yep.
Can you explain that process? Because I think it puts these beliefs in just such clear format.
Yeah, so I kind of reinvented the golden rule, and I said, the golden rule changed to fire people the way you would like to be fired. And I remember looking at that, and I go, firing is a really crappy day for anybody. And why the way we do it is not really honorable to anybody either. And it's funny because we ask employees to give 2-week notices to us when they leave, yet that we just drop them on the hat, We just say, hey, you're fired today. Go look for a job tomorrow, So I said, hey, why don't we start giving them notice or saying, hey, giving them like a small severance package, even if they're not a long-term employee. So, hey, we're gonna have to let you go, which we'd always do on a Friday. We'd always do at the end of the day, and we'd always speak to the problem, not the person. And we would always, I would even write them a letter of recommendation for the things that they're good at. And also, I wanted to remember, like, they have mortgages and bills and children and spouses and all those things that we have too. And say, hey, just letting you know, if you need your benefits extended a little bit, we can see if we can do that. We want to also give you 2 weeks of pay to help you through that too. And we try to do this for as many people as possible. And we would say often, hey, if you use your laptop to make money, like, maybe we can figure out a way you can keep your laptop. And what changed, I think, a big way is that we'd actually ask them if they'd want to come back, the following Monday, and let the entire staff go around and tell them how much they mean to us and how great they are. And so we would see about 80% of the employees that would do this, and they would come back and they would sit in the center of the room, and we would say, hey, oh man, John, you are like, every day I walked in and you smiled and you're so funny and you made working here better. And then someone else would say, your art was so incredible that every time I wake up in the morning, I look at your Instagram and you inspire me. And then the next person. And it's just this affirmation process where they go and they leave and they don't feel like a past employee. They feel like alumni. And so we really try to, things like that is what people over profit companies do. We shift, we change, we break the system, right? We break the system to create a better version of capitalism that's not so disgusting and rude and mean. And it's hard. It's really hard to do. But I think that the premise of the book is that if, I believe that if you value people over profit, you'll actually be more profitable.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think even just the profitable in terms of emotion and realizing that you've lived your life to the fullest and you can just feel like a good person.
Right? Like that's huge. Like you go home and you feel good. You don't have to worry about people hating you. And it takes a maturity. It takes a leadership and emotional maturity to do this. And it's a mature book for mature thinkers. And I hope that the goal is to get, I'm trying to sell as many copies as I can to get it on the New York Times list so that we can get this in the hands of the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world. You get the CEO of Bank of America to read this and adopt it. I mean, what does that do for the 30,000 employees they have, Changes lives.
Absolutely. And even just writing your book, you did it in a way where you were valuing people over profit. I loved at the end how you were talking about how so many books have so much fluff and how you just got yours right to the point because you knew that that's what you would want.
Right. Nobody likes a long book, especially business people. I guess if you're reading a fiction novel, you might like a long book. But, I mean, business people hate long books. And I hate it when it's like dragged on for like pages. I'm like, oh, God. So I tried to make really short chapters, really cool graphics, and just keep it simple and light. and not focus so much on length.
That's awesome. So in your speaking reel, you also said that never let a problem that needs solved be more important than a person who needs loved. Can you explain about that too?
Yeah. So I mean, like the biggest thing is our companies aren't made of parts; they're made of people. And so when you go in and the problem that needs to be solved, you're like, oh my gosh, if the problem's more important than the person, you totally screwed up. And that's what leadership is. When leaders can go, oh my gosh, I'm not talking to a problem here. I'm talking to a person that needs to have some correction to make this problem work. And that's always just been the way that I've been able to get through to people. And I think that it's helped me be a better entrepreneur because of it.
Mm. Yeah, and so kind of on the tails of this, I was reading where you were saying how you experience fright daily, fear. I'd love to hear kind of what that looks like for you and how you battle it.
Yeah, so fear sucks. I actually write that as a title in the book. Fear sucks, and fear is such a hard thing because it sits on your shoulder every day and it tells you why you won't be able to succeed and why you can't do it. And I have a quote here I'm going to try to pull up here. Is fear has kept many would-be leaders on the sidelines. While good opportunities paraded by, they didn't lack insight. They lacked courage. And I think a true leader is someone who has the courage to say publicly what everybody else is whispering privately. It's their insight that sets leaders apart. It's the courage to act on what they see, to speak up when everyone else is silent. And courage, I spoke up for causes. I spoke up for people that want to start their dream, for startupcamp.com. My big thing is just having the courage and the ability to speak up. And I think it gets easier. The way that you get better at fear is that just pushing through it. And the more you push through it, the more positive results you get from pushing through it, the more faith you have. Coming up to the next fearful thing, you go, you know what, I've been here before. I pushed through it, and I won, and it feels good, and I'll do it again. But those first few times are really hard, and it is faith. It's a total faith thing. You go, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And there's risk, right? Like no one successful has ever gone without risk. Like big risk, like ugly, horrific, scary risk. So sometimes you just got to make sure your plan Bs are in a row. Just make sure that you got a fall plan. Remember, walking a safety net walking a tightrope without a safety net is incredibly dangerous. Just walk with a safety net. It's still crazy to walk on a tightrope, but do it with a safety net. And that's kind of the philosophy I've been using.
And how did you create your safety net? I understand you were writing some things down, right?
Yeah, so I created a list, like my Plan B list. I'd put it in the drawer of my desk, and it was this list of people that I could fall back on. I'd say, okay, if this falls apart, I can go back and live with my parents. That would suck, right? But I could do that. I could get a job with this guy. I could restart this company. I could do this extra project. I could lean on my savings for 6 months. I could, X, Y, Z, right? And so creating that list, you can then use that list to when you're fearful, you just pull that list out and you go, okay, I'm good. That's my safety net. I'm just going to press forward anyways. And it's super scary, but having that list is important, and writing it down is important too.
Awesome. And so I'm curious too, just a little bit more about mindset, because you have so many things going on. When I was looking at your speaking page, it's like every week, it's almost like you're in 2 different locations or something, just all over. Started 7 companies, the book, so many things going on. How do you stay focused?
Well, it was unsustainable. So I'm now, the last probably 6 months to 9 months, I've completely changed my life around because it was a season of really rapid growth. It was way too much, and so now I'm cutting way back. I'm spending more time at home. I moved from Southern California to Bend, Oregon, and I'm living in Central Oregon now. And we bought 7 acres, and we're building a new house, and I'm living more of a peaceful life. And what I do now is I try not to work more than 5 hours a day now. It's a luxury, but I mean, I earned that luxury. So not everybody can do that right now. But I try to do that, and I try to never work on the weekends if I can. And I try to just focus, like I said, on what's important. And the more I do that, the more I can work. And if I lose focus and start diving into work again, I typically have the results that many of the listeners do, is insomnia, anxiety, depression, stress, sore back, neck, all that stuff. Like, it's very common when you just overwork. So I just try to find that balance, because I think that God created our bodies in a way that works pretty much one way. And we all have these thresholds that are built in to our bodies. And every time we push the threshold, we start breaking down, and we wonder why we're sick. We wonder why we have like hypochondria, and we think that we're always dying. It's because you're overstimulated. You just need to like chill. You need a sabbatical. You need to relax.
How do you think people can relax? I mean, like, because you mentioned how you kind of earned the right to do the 5-hour days because you've worked so much in that season of rapid growth. How can other people kind of get to that place where you are without having to overwork, or do they have to?
I think that it's the intentional 1 day a week of just complete rest. And I just know this. I'm not a preachy guy, but I'm going back to the idea of the Sabbath. And I think that Sabbath is something that's a great idea. I don't care what religion you're in or who you are. The idea of a 1 day off is a really great idea. And I think that means that you just don't do anything that has to do with work, and get off your phone for a day. And that 1 day of rejuvenation allows you to do the other 6, right? When you just do a little bit every day, you still never got that full day off. And I think a vacation is important every year. For those that can afford it, like, I don't care if it's a cheap vacation, but just do a vacation every year. If you can do it every quarter, even if it's just a weekend away. So I think that, and treat yourself. Remember, you have needs. I'm constantly giving, and I'm not trying to sound cocky. I'm just saying that I'm pouring out content, writing, speaking, teaching, and I'm on podcasts, right? Or whatever I'm doing, it's constantly giving. So I need to make sure that I recognize that I have needs. I need my wife to tell me that she loves me, and I need my wife to tell me that she's going to take care of me sometimes. And I need my friends to say, like, I got you, bro. I need a massage sometimes. I need someone to plan a day for me. And having those needs is not a bad thing as a leader. And I think that we need to be more confident in just asking or telling people around us, hey, I have needs. Can you help me out? And not feel bad about it.
How did you identify your needs?
For me, like I go for my love language, right? So that book, The 5 Love Languages, my love language is physical touch. So, having my wife give me a massage is like a great rejuvenation. Or if my wife just pays for someone to give me a massage, right? So that's a great thing. And also, I'm becoming more introverted I'm a classic extrovert, but I've become more introverted, meaning that the definition of an introvert is someone that is energized by quiet time, and an extrovert is someone who's energized by public time, social time, right? And I used to be energized by social time. Now I'm a little bit drained by it, and I'm more energized with quiet. So it's an interesting transition in life. And you don't think that's possible. You think I'm an introvert, I'm always an introvert. I'm an extrovert, I'm always an extrovert. I don't think that's true. And so I'm learning that, one of my needs is quiet, and just like watching a movie by myself. and those kind of things rejuvenate me, and also getting outside. I think that we need to be outside way more. We get stuck behind our computers and in our buildings, and getting outside is so important to have space. There's something about spaciousness that's really good for the human soul.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, now I live in Vegas and it's been getting hotter here, but I know during the winter, I would just walk outside around my house, and just my emotional happiness, I was just so much happier. It's unbelievable. And now I've been doing my walking. I try to walk at least 5 to 10 miles a day, but I'll do it inside my house, either on the treadmill or just walking in the event room. And it's not the same at all. Exercise is important, but exercise outside is just glorious.
Yeah, we go back to the things, people, we're so stupid sometimes, because we try to like create solutions that have been in place for like thousands of years, right? So let's just say that humans, have been around for 10,000 years, right? So let's just say they've been around for 10,000 years, and you think, okay, for what were they doing then, right? Like they were living outside, like like for thousands of years, like they would work outside. I mean, we're in the last like 50 years we've been working inside so much, and so I'm a purist at heart. I try to go back to like, what did people do 1,000 years ago, and I want to do more of that. And sure, I want my Tempur-Pedic bed and my sunglasses and the other things that come with living today. But I don't want to find myself living. I want a more truthful existence. That's the best way to say it, I guess.
Truthful existence. I love it. And that actually leads me to, I wanted to also ask you just about being a good consumer. Because I think that also kind of qualifies with being truthful and just living according to the values that you feel are really important to you. So can you just share like what a good consumer is to you and how you live that out?
Yeah, so I think that we all want to be good consumers, but we're so strapped on time that we don't even care. We just buy things because it's convenient. And that's why you want to have margin in your life, because if you knew some of the companies that you were supporting, you'd be embarrassed to be your friend. You'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I supported this company that treats their employees like this, or that supports child labor, or that sources their products here, or that screws customers this way, or that lies. And so I think that it's important just all of us to start asking ourselves the question when we buy products, like, hey, like, can I learn more about this company? Like, and it's a slow burn. It takes a while to do that. And it's always more expensive. But integrity always costs more. And we're trying to all build a better world. Let's put the companies that are, dishonest out of business. Like, get rid of them. Show them that if you're dishonest, you won't survive here. And the ones that are great, let's lift them up and say, hey, I know you're a quarter more, 25 cents more, but I'll support you because I love what you're doing, and you're not just cheap crap. You're solid on front end and back end. And I want to make sure that you grow. That's what I hope for consumers.
And you were saying that you like make some sacrifices in order to do that. Can you share some of the sacrifices that you make for people who are just instantly like, oh, I don't want to spend more money?
Yeah, I mean, the first big sacrifice is cost. The second sacrifice is choices, right? The third sacrifice is it's time to learn about it and to go home and talk about it, and then it's also to share about it. Right? Like, you got to share about it. So, like, you got to tell people, like, I hate leaving reviews on Yelp, good or bad. It takes time from me, but I do it. And I get on Yelp, and if I have a great experience, I say, oh, man, this place is awesome. And if it sucked, I let that person know that that this was not a good experience and they should fix it. And I think it makes them better, the ones that it will say, oh, my gosh, thanks for the feedback. I mean, people pay me $1,000 to consult their businesses, and I give them like free reviews on Yelp, right? So I'm like, I'm like, hey, here, this is what I would do. This is just check out. You should try this. Like, do you know that your high chairs don't work? None of them. All 6 of them in the corner are broken. Like, thank you for making me carry my kid the entire time I was at dinner with my family. And I say fix it, and I'll send them a link. I'll say it's $29 for a high chair, $29, and you offended, frustrated a guy who's got a massive social media platform who would have probably wrote a really beautiful review about your company, but it's very difficult to enjoy dinner when I have to carry my 1-year-old the whole time when I have friends in town, and it's like they don't understand that, and they'll say something. Often, I remember I had one guy go, he goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry, we're going to get one right now," which is great. He was doing that, and I'm thinking for me, if I own that business, I would never let it get to 7 broken ones. And I would never, I would always have a backup, right? Like, oh my gosh, and I would say, can I get you back? Can I get you free dinner? Because whenever we all of a sudden switch where it's like, we're not there to serve the business, that is the most ridiculous thing that ever happened in consumer mindsets today. Like, we're afraid to tell them that we're upset, It's like, we're not here. I'm paying them money. They're serving us. And sure, you don't want to be the guy that's like over the top. And I'll admit, sometimes I can be over the top. But most of the time I reserve myself and I say, okay, like how do I speak to this problem without offending the person? And I say, hey, I go to the manager and say, hey, like there's a problem here. Can you fix it for me? And they typically do. But remember, we are consumers. The power here is that we are the ones that they're getting served. That's what we're trading our money for. So don't be shy to like push companies a little bit because they need to get better. Don't let them make you feel that they're there to serve you. Because I'll tell you what, I didn't make $25 million in the last 10 years because I believed that consumers were here to serve me. No, I flipped it around and said, anything I can possibly do for you, I am here. You write an email to me about a problem, I'm not going to just fix it. I'm going to go 100% beyond and make sure that you're happy. And I'm going to give you free stuff, and I'm going to thank you. And that's what makes great companies. So that's I guess you heard the passion side of me on that one.
No, I love it. And I mean, I think it's only benefiting the company, just like you were saying, to let them know how you're feeling, because then they know to make those changes. If nobody tells them about the high chairs, everyone's just going to go crazy every time they come eat dinner, for how long? Until somebody says something.
And then the next guy comes in and he's a food blogger and then just leaves a bad review on them, and it screws their company for $29. So it's like that kind of stuff. It wasn't a big deal maybe in the 80s and 90s, but now that everybody has a massive platform, you have no idea who's sitting in your restaurant or who's entering your company. Because every time I think about it, I go, man, if I offend this guy, I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's got like 85,000 Facebook fans that he might say, man, love this company, but they really failed here. I'm like, crap. 80,000 people now know that I'm a crappy leader. So yeah, we are in the age of accountability, and we need to be very careful with our businesses to make sure that we are actually serving people.
Absolutely. And speaking of your platform, your social media stats are just insane. Like 756,000 followers on Pinterest, 142,000 on Twitter, and that's just for your name. But like the Daily Positive and other places have even more, hundreds of thousands, just crazy. And so I'd love to just ask you a couple of questions about that, if that's cool.
Yeah, sure. I love it.
Awesome. So first, I've seen, especially on your personal blog, you have posts that are just like ranging all over the place. So it's not like, like there's health and business and married life and all this stuff. I'm curious if you do that because you feel like you have established yourself now and so you can talk about whatever you want, or if it's like a traffic play or it just feels good to you. What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, I try to talk to people about the things that really matter. And it's typically health, it's family, it's work. And I try to just give my story in most instances. And I try to speak from experience. And I would say, I'm living this very unique life that I've been so blessed by. And I would say that it's because I follow a lot of the right people. And I take a lot of the things that I learned in books, everything from, great authors to the Bible to speakers and presentations, and I actually do them. And when you do them, they work, and I change, and I step into this really awkward, humiliating change sometimes. I mean, nobody wants to tell somebody that you have a booger on your face. But when you have a booger on your face, you got to get it off, right? And a good friend will tell you, hey man, like you got to change here. You're hurting people here. And I've had a lot of great people that tell me that, and I've been able to grow through it. And those stories, I think, really connect with people. I talk about a lot of emotional leadership. This is what I really hit in on. And I talk about the things that really matter. I don't care who you are. Women love babies, and they love them. And so I try to talk about, like, if I talk about things about women for something, I talk about kids a lot because I know that they love kids. And even if they don't have their own or don't even want to have their own, it's the idea that they love kids. And men, they love providing for families. They love it, and they love protecting people. It's innate in our minds to be providers and protectors. And women love nurturing, and they love providing and protecting too. But they love nurturing too. And so I go in this thing, and I speak to a lot of those very core things about the human, and in various different ways, and it really connects to people. And that's been like it's almost like biological marketing. It's a way that I know how humans are created, and I go, well, let's speak to those things that really matter, and And not many people talk about that stuff because a lot of people don't know what matters. They're stuck, in a unique season of life. They find themselves 45 years old and they could never make relationships work, and they don't know why. And they wanted to have kids, but it's too late now. And they never had a successful career, and they never got their purpose. And they're working at a job they hate. They're in debt. They live in an apartment. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. And so my thing is, hey, let's pull it back, and let's go back to the things that are really important, like our relationships, our faith, our forgiveness, our brokenness, and our past. And let's heal those things. Let's talk about those things. And then let's also talk about fun stuff too. I mean, I'm not so super heavy that it's overwhelming. So I feel like that's just been the big win. And authenticity has really been my core strategy, and it's worked. And I have no idea why it's worked so well, but it worked. And I hope more people can learn from that.
Yeah. And so when you're getting people over to your site, do you have so for each of the companies that you founded, do you look at the different social media sites and feel like different ones will provide more traffic for different sites, or do you focus on the same ones?
So for me, Pinterest has been a big focus. I love Pinterest. I'm a creative, so I love curating stuff. And so Pinterest has been great. Whenever, remember, when you have a website, it's not how many people that come to your site that matters. It's how many people that come to your site that you capture that will return tomorrow that matters. And so for me, I've been very good at capturing emails, been very good at capturing likes, follows, comments, shares, and connections. And so, my email list, I built my blog in 1 year from 0 to 1 million visitors and captured 100,000 emails. And with a great open rate, a great click rate. And that's the key, is capturing people to return. Again, like that connection of reality, of vulnerability. People love vulnerable people. They love I'm not the only screwed up one in the world. And so I share my screw up stories, and they go, I want to follow this guy. So, and I put if you look on dalepartridge.com or peopleoverprofit.com or startupcamp.com, you'll notice that on the articles, I have all these places for you to enter your email and all these places to strategically put, capture, a like and a follow on one of my social platforms. So that's been the main strategy. But Pinterest is crushing it. I love Instagram. I own a bunch of Instagram accounts that I've built for quotes. Some that have 500,000 followers on them. Some have 100,000 followers on them. Twitter is great. I'm on Twitter. I tweet a lot of stuff. I have a lot of stuff automated, but I'm still on there every day. Facebook has still got the most power, but only in spurts. Pinterest for me has still been the #1 powerhouse for traffic. And email. Email will always be there. I love it. I love email. Email marketing is so powerful to know how to use it. And for me, this is why I built Startup Camp, because I get these questions all the time. People ask me, how do you do this? And so startupcamp.com, I just launched it about 3 months ago, and it's a chance for people it's a 12-month curriculum where I can teach people how to start their own business through these videos and study guides and checklists and PDF packs and different things. So yeah, if anybody wants to do that, that's another place that I can help you guys do that.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I could ask you about 68 million more questions, but I realize we're coming up at the end of the hour. So just thank you so much. It's been really great to talk with you. I just love how refreshing you are and just how, authentic. It's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. For me, the big goal is if you're listening, this book is really important to me. It's a really important message to get out to the world. If you would consider picking up a copy, you can go to peopleoverprofit.com, and right now I'm offering people to, if you enter your receipt number or if you buy from our store, you'll automatically get what I have as a $300 coaching kit. It comes with an awesome ebook called People Matter that I think is actually a really good ebook. And then it comes with a private podcast interview. It comes with some coaching videos, and it really kind of hits the book even harder. So, thank you just for considering that. And thank you, Rachel, for having me on the show. It's really cool to be here and tell my story just to anybody that will listen. I'm really honored to be here.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And once we hang up, I'm going to buy another copy so I can support you because I love what you're doing. And is there anywhere else that you'd like people to find you, or just peopleoverprofit.com?
Yeah, peopleoverprofit.com, startupcamp.com, and then anywhere on social media, just at Dale Partridge.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to A Better Life. You can find all show notes for this episode at rachelrofay.com. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe so you can automatically get access to all new shows. Let's also connect. Just go onto Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram /RachelRofay, and we can talk there. The opinions of all guests here are their own, and I'm not necessarily endorsing any of them. I do want to give you perspective, though. And always remember, if you have a choice, choose a better life.